Hello and welcome into the Birds of the Round Table for another victory edition of the podcast as the Eagles clinch the NFC East. And because of the afternoon games, we now know the Eagles are locked into the 2 seed, win, lose, or draw in Week 18. We're going to talk about the game. I am your host, Shane Haff. Give me a follow on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. Also joined by Dibes. Give him a follow at Mr. Crockpot. Dibes, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Always a pleasure to talk shop here on Birds of the Round Table. A lot of positives from Sunday, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's more like birds of the coffee table today because it's just Dibes and I. We knew David was a maybe for tonight. We have no idea where Ryan is. Ryan just stood us up. We literally recorded a show with Ryan earlier this afternoon, and when we were leaving, we were like, "Hey, we'll see you at 7:00." And so everybody can harass Ryan later, tastefully. Don't go too far, but you can harass Ryan a little bit, especially when he shows up for your other show here in 45 minutes. But Dives and I were honestly behind the scenes like, hey, if they don't show up, should we do the show? Because we were both on post game, and there's really not a lot to preview about this Giants matchup. But we're going to do a quick show anyways and give you guys, we got a little bit more time to have thought about the game, let it settle out. So Dibes, let's go offensive takeaway first. What's your top offensive takeaway in this one?
There's a lot of different routes I can go. Can I have multiple offensive takeaways?
Sure.
But I mean, I'm a trenches guy. So my top takeaway has to be the Eagles offensive line. I thought really pounded the Dallas Cowboys into submission yesterday. And that's something we really didn't see a lot from the Washington Commanders game. They weren't as elite as we normally expect, but yesterday, Cam Jurgens had his best run blocking grade per PFF since week 14. Becton, Dickerson, Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens, all those guys allowed 0 pressures and 0 sacks. Jordan Mailata had 1 pressure allowed. We talk about Saquan Barkley and how amazing he's been all season long, and he deserves all the flowers. But this offensive line has been paving the way for him all season long. It's not a surprise to see that he leads or is tops in the league in yards before contact. And this was a Cowboys defense that coming in to week 17 was doing pretty well. I mean, they've showed real improvement. They had 22 total sacks over the last 5 games. But, man, this offensive line kept a clean pocket for both Kenny Pickett and Tanner Mcke. And Parsons was nowhere to be found, man. Parsons had his worst pass rush grade per PFF of the season at 64. I give so much credit to this Eagles offensive line. It's what we wanted to see in the second half against the Commanders. They delivered for 4 quarters against the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, according to Micah Parsons, it was actually a pretty close game if you take away the score.
What was that, man?
I don't know if you saw that clip, but
I did. I don't even know how to respond to that.
Yeah, quote, if you take away the scoreboard, the game would have been close. Which, to be fair, he's just parroting the Cowboys mantra in the postseason over the last decade. So, shout out to Micah Parsons. He is the perfect Cowboy. Doesn't show up in big games, says things like that after the game.
That guy's an idiot, man. I'm not I was team Parsons this offseason, but I might have to shift over to team Garrett. I don't know.
I think it doesn't matter which team you're on. You're not getting either one. But
you're probably right.
Yeah, for my offensive takeaway, I'll mention 2 things. One is it was really nice to see Devontae Smith have a great game. 6 receptions, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, it's never as simple as when you lose a game, it's on one person. But if you're Devontae Smith, when you drop a pass that would have sealed that game against Washington and then the defense proceeds to give up a touchdown drive and you lose, that's what's in your head all week. And so it was nice to see Devontae Smith bounce back in this one. 6 receptions, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns on 7 targets. I was just glad to see him get his swagger back because we're going to need that in the postseason. A.J. Brown's phenomenal. You need Devontae Smith playing at a high level too. And granted, he's not going to be lined up against Andrew Booth in the postseason. It doesn't get a lot easier than facing Andrew Booth, but I was happy to see Devontae Smith have a good game. And then, too, just the next man up mentality from the offense with, you come into the game with a backup quarterback, and then Kenny Pickett gets knocked out of the game, and Tanner McKee steps right in, and he throws 2 touchdown passes. And I saw this stat on Twitter that I think it was from Opta Stats that said that Tanner McKee is the only quarterback in NFL history with multiple touchdown passes on less than 5 attempts. And so Tanner McKee out there setting records. And, he looked like he belonged. And that's what the Eagles wanted to do at the backup quarterback position. They wanted to have guys that they feel comfortable going to, to go get a win against a 500 team that's a division rival, to clinch a playoff seed. Like, that's what you wanted. You don't expect to go win a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback, but you want to be able to go 500 in the regular season if you have to put them in. And so that's why the Eagles made the trade for Pickett. It's why they spent a 3rd-round pick on Tanner McKee a couple off seasons ago. It's why they're going to continue to invest resources into backup quarterbacks. So shout out to the Eagles offense for the next man up mentality.
Yeah, and that's all we ask from Kenny Pickett, really. Just, avoid the turnovers. And I think he was like among the tops in Week 17 in turnover-worthy plays. Like he kept control of the football. He made big plays, big throws when it mattered. The throw to Devontae, the throw to AJ, that was Kenny Pickett, right? I think that was the play he got decked by Parsons.
It was a scramble drill at the back of the end zone.
Yeah, that was a great throw, man. It's a shame it didn't count. But major credit to Kenny Pickett. I've been very critical over Kenny Pickett's role here in Philadelphia. I've never liked the trade to begin with, but we brought him in to win these kind of games, and he did it. So major shout out to him. What's your take on Tanner McKee versus Kenny Pickett in Week 18? I know I'm jumping the gun here, but who would you rather see play, and what's your thoughts?
I mean, I would rather see Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee is more exciting to me. He's got a better arm. I think the Eagles are going to play Pickett if he's healthy, but I think there's a real chance that he's not. Like, you're going to get into the same thing that you're heading into the playoffs. And if Kenny Pickett's nursing a rib injury that he's likely to re-injure, they may want to keep him out unless they have to put him in, just in case you need him for a quarter in a playoff game. And so I would not be surprised to see Tanner McKee get the run at quarterback next week. And I would be excited to see that. I hope he would look good, not be plagued by drops from the Eagles' non-existent backup wide receivers and things like that, kind of like the preseason. But I'd like to see McKee. I could also be convinced that it'd be nice to see Pickett go light up the Giants and boost that trade value to maybe move off of him in the offseason, but I'm not convinced the Eagles would do that.
I mean, he had 2 touchdowns? Like, what was his quarterback rating? Like, kind of leave it at it.
He literally 50% of his passes were touchdowns. So
now this throw from Tanner McKee was behind Devontae on the slant. But there's the touchdown pass. I'm trying to find the one there's another touchdown pass. I thought I had the one. This was a really cool moment. You asked me before we went live what was my favorite moment. There were 2 really cool moments that were not even during the game on offense. One was this moment with the fan in the stands and Big Dom coming over, getting the ball, and AJ giving back the ball to Tanner McKee. By the way, AJ Brown is such a bad teammate. Oh my God. Like, just the worst. The other amazing moment, and I can pull it up in just a second, for me was the moment of Mekhi Becton walking off the field, emotional in tears. Did you see that one?
I didn't, no.
Okay, I'll go get it. But it just sums up everything you could imagine about what he went through with the New York Giants. Let me get this
Jets.
up. The Jets. Oh my gosh. Sorry. It was awesome, man. Here, I'm pulling it up now. But Mekhi Becton, what a turnaround for his career. The dude's going to make a lot of money. But here he is, just emotional, just gone through war. You can tell, like, he's been beaten up, but just you can see it in his eyes. He's just emotional as he walks off the field as NFC East champions. This was a really cool moment. This kind of had me tearing up when I watched it last night. But what a comeback story for Mekhi Becton, who, again, in Jeff Stoutland we trust, baby. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also love the moment from Saquon after the game being like, I didn't realize the shirt and hat was a thing. Love that. Which, by the way, just saying, Tanner Mcke has thrown 50% of his passes for touchdowns this year. If he was just a starter and you gave him the same attempts that Jalen Hurts has, he would have thrown for 180 touchdowns this year. So obviously 100% joking, but I did like seeing him succeed. Let's flip it over and talk defensive takeaways. And for me, it's my defensive takeaway is pretty similar to the offensive one, and that's the next man up mentality. You get Oren Burks inserted into the starting lineup, nice. For Nakobe Dean, and I thought Oren Burks played a solid game. Watching live, it's like I didn't really notice him other than the fumble, which is good for a backup, but he forces a fumble. He leads the team in tackles. I saw one really bad rep on the all-22 where he still thinks that play action fake was a run. But other than that, he played a pretty solid game, and it's nice to know that you have some of that depth because, one of the concerns with Nakobe Dean was his durability, and he's been tremendously durable this year, but that's something we were concerned about. It's nice to know there's something behind him if you had to stick him in a playoff game. So I liked seeing that. Also liked seeing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson continue to make plays. Gets the pick 6 early in the game, and I love to see that because I was pretty out on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson halfway through the season. I thought I didn't think he had a really bad start to the year. And so he's bounced back tremendously over the last few weeks, and the Eagles are going to need him in the playoffs.
Yeah. Gardner-Johnson was the story, as we talked about during halftime and post-game show. Holy shnikes, the drop-off when Gardner-Johnson is on the field versus off the field is so noticeable. It was almost as noticeable as Jalen Hurts not in the game against the Washington Commanders. Gardner-Johnson was terrific. He now has 6 interceptions this year, second most in the NFL, and that the leaders are Xavier McKinney and Kirby Joseph. Isn't McKinney on the Packers, by the way?
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that as we head into playoff talk. But, man.
Shout out to the Giants for letting the rushing leader and the interception leader leave in the same offseason.
Yeah. And, we all talk about Zach Bond and Jalen Carter and how those two are the leaders of the defense. But Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, man, this is a guy I've been very critical at the beginning of the 2024 season. And the last 10, 11, 12 weeks, he's been outstanding. I'm happy that injury is not nearly as bad as it looked. I think he had an ankle injury there, but that's another position that they cannot afford to screw around with because Sidney Johnson keeps getting ejected or penalized. Tristan McCollum not near ready, things like that. So. Major shout out to CJ GJ as the most underrated leader of this defense.
My son is super into football. He's about to turn 10. He's super into the games. Although he did ask if we could play Super Smash Brothers during the fourth quarter when it was 41-7, and I was like, no. And he's like, but we know who's going to win. I was like, no. Sorry, but so he's not sicko level, but he's really into it. And we had a teaching the game moment when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson went down. I thought it was a non-contact injury. And so when they showed the replay and they showed Jalix Hunt stepping on him, I was like, oh, good. He got stepped on. And my son was like, that's mean. And I was like, no. That means he probably just tweaked his ankle instead of blowing out his knee. Non-contact injuries are the worst. So we had a teaching ball moment to explain why I was celebrating that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson got stepped on. But yeah, let's go to a few of the comments here. Q says another great moment was fans giving Jerry Jones a hard time at the game. Long live Jerry Jones and long live Mike McCarthy.
Reuven says, love the Becton clip. You saw him emotional walking off the field. coming off the New York Jets. Did you see Sauce Gardner basically saying he's not recruiting anybody to play for the New York Jets? Did you see that?
I did not know.
Man, that's just a garbage franchise, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's nice to see us getting guys off the trash heap and both of the New York teams and having such a good performance this year. I also had a comment come in from Brett Eclipse asking, apparently Drew Lock had the 6th best performance by EPA ever last week. Is that true? It was since 1999. I'm not sure what the qualifier is. I'm sure there's like a minimum passes thing because Tanner McKee's EPA was actually almost double Drew Lock, or not double. It was like 50% more than Drew Lock's. So, but I'm sure he doesn't qualify with 4 passes. But yeah, incredible performance by Drew Lock to tank the Giants draft pick. He also says that we can talk about a lot of defensive takeaways. There's been 9 in the last 2 weeks.
That's a great one.
Which is great. Hopefully those continue to come in droves. I guess we can do player of the weeks. We just did player of the weeks on the post-game show, though, and mine's not changing. You get an interception, get player of the week. You get 2 interceptions and a touchdown, you definitely get it. So I'll shout out Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for my player of the game. Where are you going for yours?
I'll go Devontae Smith. There's so many ways you could go, but Devontae Smith, being in the shadow of A.J. Brown, just being so elite. A.J. Brown, so elite in, contested catch situations, against man coverage, just purely dominant. I don't know if you want to call him the best wide receiver in football, but he's right in the top 3 discussion, has to be. You just notice when he's on the field and off the field, this Eagles offense just sputters. He's right there with Saquon, is arguably the most important pieces of this offense. But Devontae, it's been a roller coaster up and down season for him, man. He's missed a few games. He's had games where he's not involved. And then he's had good games. So for me, major shout out to Devontae, who's now could maybe get 900 yards on the season. He's got a career high 8 touchdowns this year. And that makes 3 straight years of at least 7 touchdowns. So I think the best is yet to come for Devontae. He's so much better than a number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's nice to see, like we kind of talked about him earlier too. Yeah, it's just nice to see him bounce back and have a good game. Hopefully he and AJ can both have a couple of good games in the playoffs. But let's turn the page. And there's really not much worth previewing in this Giants game. It is a meaningless game, and we don't know if the Eagles are going to play starters or not. I get we could debate that, but there's going to be plenty of debate about that throughout the week. But it will be interesting to watch how they handle Saquon Barkley and how they handle the rushing thing and how they handle it against, his former team. And I think there's some merit to the fact that, you want to give Saquon the chance, but also you don't want to make a 34-year-old Lane Johnson go out there and play when he's played banged up at times. And so, I'm very curious to see how the Eagles approach this. What are your thoughts on Saquon chasing the record and how you should handle Week 18?
I'm absolutely terrified, man. Absolutely. This is a very sensitive topic for me because I go straight to that AJ Brown game to finish in the regular season finale in 2023. Just a year ago, AJ Brown gets hurt, doesn't play against the Tampa Bay Bucks, Eagles lose. That's where I go. That's for me. So, Saquon is so vital to this offense. I know it's a special stat. It's a special stat. Eric Dickerson is one of the best stats there is in all of sports. But I'm big picture. I'm also a diehard Sixers fan, a guy that's dealt with this with Doc Rivers and coaches hunting for regular season awards and it completely costing the team in the playoffs. I got to have my best player on the field for the playoffs. I don't care. Sorry.
Yeah. And then there's also the point of, are you going to play Hurts? because if you don't play Hurts, it'll have basically been almost a month since he last played when you hit the playoffs. And I don't think that's ever ideal. And then you get into the whole like, well, if you're playing Hurts, you're playing the starting O-line and you're also playing the receivers. And so at that point, you might as well play Barkley and just not call QB. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm glad it's not my call to make, but it's certainly something that will be hotly debated all over the internet. But I don't really have a lot of interest in previewing the Giants game because, again, we don't know who the Eagles are going to play, so I don't really know what to even talk about. But Dives, is there anything you want to shout out in that matchup? And then I got a question about playoff matchups for you, and we can get out of here.
Yeah, obviously the big one, I think, well, there's a couple. It's the Giants versus the idea of tanking. I mean, their head coach, the players, Drew Lock, they are anti-tank mode right now. Sorry, Giants fans, but they're playing hard. They're definitely playing hard, and the matchup I'm looking at is Malik Neighbors versus this Eagles secondary, which will probably be backups, most likely be backups. Malik Neighbors is putting up crazy numbers. In fact, there's 4 rookies this year that have all crossed 1,000 receiving yards. Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, and Malik Neighbors last week. Malik Neighbors had 7 catches for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. Who is he going to be going up against? Probably like Ringo, guys like that I think Neighbors could have a really big day. So Malik Neighbors is a big one to watch out for.
Yeah, I'm going to be real interested to see. Like, the Eagles aren't going to play starters the whole game, even if they play some of them for a quarter or two. I'm going to be really interested to watch some of these guys like Keely Ringo, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch some of these guys. I mean, you and I are both draft guys, so to watch some of these young guys that we liked in the draft and maybe haven't gotten to see much yet.
There is one guy, Moro Ojomo, who's looked really good this season. In fact, can you believe this, Shane? Only twice this season, Moro Ojomo has had 0 pressures in a game all season long. He's had at least 1 pressure or more in all but 2 games this year. So Ojomo is a big one to watch for sure. And I would love to see Jeremiah Trott Jr. lay the axe down on Drew Lock this weekend. That would be really fun. Outside of that, it's going to be rough. It could be rough. Yeah. But by the way, and I do mean this, it would be hilarious for the Giants to win and then be like a number 10 draft selection in the 2025 draft just because they won the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I said this. I said this when the Giants had number 1 overall. I was like, I'm so happy they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders, and he's going to be a Giant for the next few years. The only thing that would be better than them drafting Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward is trading up for the opportunity to do so. So I've majorly got my fingers crossed for that.
I mean, Shedeur Sanders looks locked in for New York right now. I mean, he's posting like pictures or something of blue and white or something, shoes, all this
cleats.
Stuff. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Dives. Last question. The Eagles are locked into the 2 seed. The question is, who will their opponent be? And it comes down to week 18. I'm still not used to saying 18. As it stands right now, it would be Green Bay. But the season's not over right now. Green Bay hosts the Chicago Bears, and Washington travels to Dallas. If Green Bay beats Chicago, which I think they would be motivated to do, if I'm Green Bay, I would much rather play the Rams than play the Eagles. And so if we assume they beat Chicago, which I think is a good assumption, it comes down to Washington. Washington would have to lose to Dallas, and then they would drop to the 7 seed. And I would imagine Washington is also pretty motivated to win, again, to not face the Eagles. And so I think both of these teams are going to be trying to win. Who do you want to face wild card weekend? Who do you want to host the first round of the playoffs if you had your choice? Would you rather host Green Bay, who the Eagles beat in week 1, or Washington, who they split with this season?
I think it's Washington. I love Jaden Daniels, and he's so special. But for the simple fact that I just turned 40, so I go back to the days when there were real rivalries in sports, not these like buddy days where everyone loves each other and there's no hatred, but there's real potential that the Commanders and the Eagles could be facing off against each other for the foreseeable future. And that to me is fun. Give me Jaden Daniels in the playoffs. I really want to see this Eagles defense go up against him. I think that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah, I would much rather face the Commanders. I think Jaden Daniels is playing better football right now than perhaps slightly than Jordan Love. But Jordan Love is every bit as capable. He's maybe not as much of a scrambler as Daniels, and scrambling quarterbacks can give the Eagles issues, but I would much rather face a Cliff Kingsbury offense than face a Matt LaFleur offense when you get into January football. And I just think the Packers are overall playing better football right now. So I think the Eagles should beat both of these teams.
Yeah.
I think if they're hosting the Commanders, they're probably like a 6.5 point favorite. And I think if they're hosting the Packers, they're probably like a 4.5 point favorite. So I think it's pretty close, but I would rather play the Commanders. I think the Packers are a better team overall. I would also like to get revenge for the last game and personally be the team that ends their season after all the trash they talked for beating Kenny Pickett. So
I'll say this. I think the Eagles smoke both of these teams. If they're fully healthy and ready to go, I'm not concerned.
Yeah. The Eagles should be expected to win both games, but sounds like we both would rather face Washington. So there you go, guys. An abbreviated show tonight because, again, Ryan bailed on us. Love you, Ryan. Hope you had a good nap or whatever you did. But that's going to about do it. Dives, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts, man, just stay healthy. Oh, my God. Whatever decision Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore do with Saquon in this offense, just freaking stay healthy. That's number one. As I said this last week. If you go back to shows a week or two ago, I've been saying pounding the table for the same thing. I love that Tanosaurus Rex. I would love to see a lot of Tanner Mcke against the New York Giants. Let's see what we got. It's time for him to show us that he's QB2, as Shane and I have been saying for years now, I feel like. But anyway, give me lots of Tanner Mcke. Please, for the love of God, stay healthy, and let's enjoy this. Let's have a stress-free final Sunday of the regular season because it's about to get real. That's it. I better not see Quinion. I better not see Jalen Carter. I better not see all my guys out there on that defense. They better be just keep them in their hotel rooms, their homes. Keep them on ice. Absolutely zero part of this defense. That's the biggest separator for this Eagles team to make a big playoff run is this defense resting and getting ready to go, because I do think it's dumb, and I think there's a real chance we could see them make a big Super Bowl run.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Birds of the Round Table at an abnormal time, but with New Year's Eve tomorrow night, people had plans, and so we bumped it up for a day. So I hope you guys have a happy New Year's, however you choose to celebrate. You guys stay safe out there, and we will catch you next year here on the Eagles Pinpool Network. Go Birds.